Van Helsing is tasked to kill the ancient vampire Dracula, and along the way, he finds clues to his forgotten past and a plot to unleash greater evil into the world. Dr. Victor Frankenstein has created life, but hears the villagers breaking down his doors. Suddenly, Count Dracula appears, thrilled about Victor's success. He reminds the doctor that he gave him the castle and his laboratory, so his creation must now serve him. As the mob invades the castle, the doctor learns about Dracula's plans. Horrified, he calls his assistant, Igor, for help, but Igor now works for the Count. Desperate, Victor grabs a sword, but Dracula willingly stabs himself with it, reminding the doctor that he's already dead. With that, Dracula drinks his blood. After he's done, however, Victor's creation throws a cage against the vampire, sending him into the fireplace. The creature then carries Victor's body and takes him to the nearby windmill. Seeing this, Igor screams, alerting the mob. The mob burns the windmill but flees when they see Dracula and his brides arriving. The creature mourns for his father before the structure collapses, sending him into the fiery abyss. A year later, Van Helsing finds the monstrous Mr. Hyde at Notre Dame. Though his superiors prefer to save Hyde's human half, Van Helsing prefers to kill him quickly. Hearing this, Hyde knocks him back. Van Helsing opens fire, but the creature disappears. Suddenly, Hyde rushes toward him and traps him in the church's bell. When he checks, however, the man is gone. Instead, the hunter hides inside the bell and cuts his arm off. Pissed, Hyde throws Van Helsing against the ceiling, then off the church. Van Helsing shoots a grappling hook into his stomach to halt his fall. Hyde pulls the wire to lift Van Helsing but falls on the other side. This leads him to swing across the church and crash into the rose window. Hyde reverts into Dr. Jekyll before dying on the pavement. The following day, Van Helsing meets Cardinal Jeanette, who scolds him for shattering the rose window. He recounts how they found Van Helsing half dead with no memory, so they believe that he was sent to do God's work. The two head to the underground headquarters of the Knights of the Holy Order, who vanquish the evil that people don't know exists. He tasks Van Helsing with killing Dracula in Transylvania. 450 years ago, Valerius the Elder vowed that his family wouldn't enter heaven until they vanquished Dracula. His descendant, Boris Valerius, disappeared a year ago, leaving his children, Velkan and Anna. If the siblings are killed before Dracula dies, their family souls will never rest. Their ancestor left a ripped scroll with an insignia that matches Van Helsing's ring. Because of this, he wonders if he'll find his past in Transylvania. Meanwhile, Velkan uses himself as bait until a werewolf emerges. Velkan is hoisted up, but the pulley gets stuck, leaving him within the werewolf's reach. Anna goes to save him, so Velkan orders his men to cut the rope. The beast falls into a hidden pit and gets pulled inside a cage. The cage hits Velkan, making him drop his gun. His men start shooting the werewolf while Anna searches for Velkan's gun since only its silver bullets can kill the beast. The gunfire accidentally cuts the cage's ropes, so it falls and releases the werewolf. It chases after Anna, so Velkan pushes his sister away and shoots. However, the werewolf brings him down the cliff with it, leaving Anna alone. Days later, Van Helsing and a friar from the order named Karl arrive at Transylvania. The village's undertaker greets them just before Anna arrives, demanding them to disarm. Instead, Van Helsing fires his crossbow into Dracula's brides behind Anna. The people flee while Van Helsing rains arrows at the vampires. Noticing him, Verona tasks Marischka with killing him. Suddenly, the brides disappear as the clouds part, letting the sun's rays shine. Something moves inside the well, so Van Helsing and Anna approach. The clouds cover the sun again, so Alira emerges from the well and grabs Anna. Anna slices at her ankle to free herself and she crashes onto a roof. She then hides inside a house, but Alira is there, who throws her out the window. Meanwhile, Van Helsing shoots Marischka until she knocks him down, making him lose his crossbow. Karl tosses holy water to him, but Verona catches it and throws it into the well. However, Karl points to the holy water in front of the church, giving Van Helsing an idea. Rushing into another house, Anna finds herself cornered by Alira and Verona. Outside, Van Helsing retrieves his crossbow and rushes to the church. Just before Verona and Alira bite Anna, Van Helsing dips his weapon in holy water and kills Marischka. Sensing her death, Verona and Alira flee. Despite his victory, the villagers yell at Van Helsing. The Undertaker explains that the vampires only hunt to survive, but now they'll kill for revenge. Still, Anna commends him for being the first one to kill a vampire in over 100 years. In his castle, Dracula wakes up in mourning. He yells at his other brides for failing to kill Anna, but they continue to weep for Marischka. The Count tasks his new beast to seek Marischka's killer as they continue their plans. His brides refuse as their last failure broke their hearts. In anguish, Dracula screams at them, making them hide in fear. However, he reminds them not to fear him since everyone else does. With his brides in his arms, he orders Dwargi servants to go to Castle Frankenstein. In Castle Valerius, Anna shares that Dracula lived there centuries ago, but now they don't know where he lives. She points to the map her father would stare at while figuring out where Dracula is. Anna insists on handling Dracula alone, defending that she wasn't prepared earlier because the vampires don't usually attack in daylight. Van Helsing insists that the only way to save her family's souls is to keep her alive until Dracula dies, so he sedates her. Later, Anna wakes up and searches for Van Helsing, but finds a beast's footprints. Grabbing a gun, she searches for the beast and shoots it when the werewolf appears. The clouds cover the moon just as Anna hides. Suddenly, Velkan appears, delighting Anna that he's alive. He tries to tell her something but stops as the moon reappears. Anna watches in tears as Velkan transforms into the werewolf. Van Helsing arrives, so Velkan leaps out the window. He chases after the beast, but only finds the Undertaker digging graves. Suddenly, the werewolf leaps, so Van Helsing evades, leading it to kill the Undertaker instead. When Van Helsing aims, Anna swipes his hand, making him miss. As Velkan escapes, Van Helsing argues that he's not her brother anymore. Surprised that he knew, Anna berates him for shooting at Velkan. She has heard that Dracula has a cure for lycanthropy, so she wants to use it for her brother. Sympathizing with her, Van Helsing agrees to help. They soon find wolf fur on a path, seeing this as evidence that Velkan hasn't completed his transformation. Thus, he can be cured. The two soon see activity from Castle Frankenstein, so they head there. Inside, Velkan transforms into his human form, though he's under Dracula's control. The Count reveals a corpse that the Dwargis are removing from a steel table. Recognizing his father's necklace, Velkan moves to attack Dracula, but the Count puts him on the table, noting that him being a werewolf, Velkan might be more effective than his father. Meanwhile, Anna and Van Helsing enter the castle and overhear the Dwargis talk about Velkan. They later discover countless eggs, which the hunter deduces are the vampire's undead children that Dracula is trying to bring to life. As the Dwargis activate Victor's machine, Velkan is lifted up the tower, where lightning hits him. From him, electricity runs through the eggs, reviving the undead children. Van Helsing starts shooting the creatures, which Dracula notices, so he corners the hunter while Anna runs to find Velkan. She reaches the laboratory and sees Velkan above. Meanwhile, the villagers wake up to thousands of vampire children led by their mothers. When Anna finally reaches Velkan, he stops her from unstrapping him as he's transforming into a werewolf again. Elsewhere, Van Helsing stabs Dracula through the heart. However, this doesn't harm Dracula, who calls him Gabriel. Seeing his stunned face, Dracula realizes that Van Helsing doesn't remember his past. Uninterested, Van Helsing then brandishes a crucifix, which the Count easily burns. In the village, Carl saves a woman from an offspring. Suddenly, the creatures start exploding, so Alira and Verona mourn their way back to the castle. Their cries distract Dracula, so Van Helsing escapes and reunites with Anna. Using a grappling hook, he and Anna zip towards the forest. But Velkan finishes his transformation and pulls the wire, causing them to drop to the ground. On their way to the windmill's ruins, Anna berates Van Helsing for using a stake and crucifix on Dracula, as if they've never tried those before. Emotionally, she mourns for Velkan, finally accepting that he's no longer himself. Suddenly, the floor collapses, sending them into an underground cavern. In the morning, Carl wakes up next to the woman he saved last night. He leans on the wall and accidentally reveals a painting. There, he sees knights fight as a vampire and a werewolf. Meanwhile, Anna and Van Helsing discover a creature in the cavern. Anna identifies the creature as Frankenstein's monster. The monster argues that he has done nothing wrong, yet they wish him dead. As he confronts her, Anna asks what he wants. The monster stops and answers that he wants to exist. Van Helsing sends tranquilizer darts at him, weakening him. The monster tells them to kill him because he's the key to life for Dracula's children. Van Helsing argues that the children were revived last night, but the monster claims they all died because only he can give them lasting life. However, there are more eggs to be revived. The monster loses consciousness, so Anna moves to kill it, but Van Helsing stops her. He insists that his job is to vanquish evil, but the monster isn't evil. Suddenly, they find Velkan fleeing the cavern, so Anna figures that he'll tell Dracula where the monster is. With that, Van Helsing takes the monster into a carriage to send him to the Order. With Carl sitting with the monster, Van Helsing rides the carriage through the woods. Soon, however, Verona and Alira attack just as they approach a broken bridge. The horses reach the bridge and leap, though the carriage falls. Desperate, Verona swoops down and rips the door open, but finds only explosives and silver stakes inside. She tries to fly away, but the carriage hits the ground, triggering the explosion and sending the silver stakes to kill her. Meanwhile, Van Helsing reunites with Anna, who's driving the real carriage where Carl and the monster are. However, Velkin attacks, forcing them to jump out of the way. The friction from Velkin's claws set the carriage ablaze while Van Helsing and Anna hang on from opposite sides. Carl and the monster work together to throw the two back onto the carriage, but Velkin claws at the carriage. The fire spreads, so they jump out while Van Helsing shoots the werewolf. Later, Anna finds her wounded brother in his human form, who dies in her arms. Van Helsing approaches, so a mournful Anna yells at him for killing her brother. However, she sees his wound, revealing that he's been bitten. Suddenly, Alira appears and takes Anna away into Budapest. When the men reach the city, Alira appears to them and announces that Dracula wants to trade Anna for the monster during the masquerade ball tonight. After she flies away, Carl notices Van Helsing's wound, and the monster deduces that he'll turn into a werewolf. Despite this, Van Helsing tranquilizes the monster again and hides him in the cemetery. As they head to the ball, Carl assures him that Dracula won't be able to control him until he fully transforms at the final stroke of midnight 2 nights from now. At the ball, Dracula controls Anna as they dance. He kisses her passionately, revealing that he doesn't intend to trade her. When they face a mirror, Anna sees only her reflection as the other guests are also vampires. Dracula notes that he wants a new bride, so he prepares to turn Anna when Carl pushes a performer to set Dracula's cape ablaze. With that, Van Helsing swings from a trapeze to snatch Anna away. Before the escape, however, Igor arrives with the monster, having taken him from the cemetery. With the creature on his side, Dracula unleashes his vampiric guests on them. The two hide in a room where they find Carl. The three jump through the window as Carl leaves a bomb that decimates the vampires. The group falls into the water where they see the monster being taken away. Van Helsing insists on saving him, but Carl reveals that the Order has decided to kill the monster so he can't be used for evil. This angers Van Helsing, so he chokes Carl, asking if he also told them that he'll turn into a werewolf. Carl says no, so he releases him. Van Helsing roars but fights the urge to turn and apologizes to his friend. The next day, they find Castle Frankenstein empty. Carl assures them that Dracula can't revive his children until sundown, and that he'll find Dracula's lair before then. In Castle Valerius, Carl recounts that Dracula is actually Valerius the Elder's son, who was murdered by the left hand of God. When he died, he made a deal with the devil to give him life. Guilty that his son became evil, Valerius the Elder made a pact to destroy Dracula, but couldn't bring himself to kill his son. Therefore, he banished Dracula into an icy fortress and left clues for his descendants to kill him. Recalling Boris staring at the castle's map, Van Helsing checks and confirms that there's a piece missing. He uses the scroll from Jeanette as the missing piece and reads the inscription. The map turns into a mirror, and when they walk into it, they arrive at Castle Dracula. Upon entering, Igor sees them, so Van Helsing throws a blade to pin him to the wall. Suddenly, they hear the monster wailing and find him being lifted. Van Helsing forces the bars open to reach him, but the monster reminds him that Dracula has a cure for his werewolf curse. He urges Van Helsing to save himself instead. Learning that Dracula has a cure, Carl deduces that a werewolf can kill Dracula. Anna argues that Dracula has been using werewolves for years, but Carl thinks that he needs the cure to turn them into humans if they ever go against him. With that, Van Helsing orders Igor to take Anna and Carl to the antidote while he kills Dracula. Before they part ways, Anna and Van Helsing share a passionate kiss. Soon, the monster is taken up the tower to revive Dracula's children, so Van Helsing climbs. On the opposite tower, Igor shows Anna and Carl the antidote but locks them inside. Alira appears, so Anna pushes the jar where the antidote is, and its acidic contents burn the bride's face. When Carl grabs the antidote, Anna uses the acid to melt the gate. Carl flees, but Alira throws Anna back. Outside, Carl runs to the bridge, but Igor attacks him with an electric spear. At the top of the tower, Van Helsing unstraps the monster, but lightning strikes the creature, thus activating the machine. Dracula sees the hunter, so he transforms into his monstrous form and attacks him. Another bolt of lightning hits the monster, and finally, Dracula's children are given life. Struggling through the electrocution, the monster leaps off the table and hangs over the cables. He swings across the bridge, hitting Igor, who falls to his death. The monster hangs on, begging Carl for help. Carl remembers that he's supposed to die, but the monster pleads, so he helps him. During this, Alira beats Anna and prepares to drink her blood. However, the monster crashes inside, kicking Alira off. He then throws the vampire off and urges Anna to go to Van Helsing while he deals with Alira. Before leaving, Anna thanks him. At the laboratory, Dracula corners Van Helsing as he celebrates his children's life. However, Van Helsing knows that they'll also die upon his death, so he transforms into a werewolf and fights the vampire. Dracula beats him and attempts to fly away, but the werewolf grabs him. Anna swings from a cable across the bridge and Carl throws the antidote into her hands. However, Alira escapes and knocks Anna back. She corners the woman, but Carl throws a silver stake, which Anna catches and uses to kill the bride. Meanwhile, the werewolf and the vampire continue to fight until Van Helsing gains the upper hand. Before he delivers the final blow, the clouds block the moon, forcing him back to his human form. He hides as Dracula recounts how Van Helsing was the left hand of God who murdered him. Dracula corners him and notes that the ring he wears was also his. He offers to return Van Helsing's memory, but he refuses. The clouds part again, allowing the man to turn into a werewolf. Quickly, he bites Dracula's neck, killing him and his children. Anna arrives and lunges at the werewolf with the antidote, but the beast jumps at her. Seeing this, Carl prepares the silver stake to kill his friend, only for the werewolf to catch his arm. To their surprise, Anna was able to inject the antidote into Van Helsing, but she died in the process. The werewolf carries her body, howling in grief as he turns back into a human. Soon, they burn Anna's body on a funeral pyre while the monster sails on a raft, hoping to find a place where he can live in peace. As Van Helsing mourns, he looks up at the sky and sees Anna reuniting with her family, who have finally earned their place in heaven.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.